Okay, today's video is a complete overview of everything helpful I could gather regarding the Destiny 2 Crucible and PvP in general. This is also sort of a halfway update on my previous video regarding the three main stats, resilience, mobility, and recovery, which was PvE based and had a really bad takeaway regarding specifically mobility and resilience. Of course, with that video, knowing the internet and certain gamers' mentalities in general, a whole slew of angry virgins started to jackhammer on their keyboards. But the truth of the matter was, if you peeled back the horrible grammar, the spam, and the insults, some of them had valuable input. Certain players do not enjoy Destiny 2 PvP, and they have no wish to play Crucible or participate in trials at all, but regardless of whether or not it is a player's preferred activity, the truth is there is valuable gear and engrams to be earned, so a large chunk of the players who don't really want to do it at all will indeed venture in on certain occasions to complete objectives. Those players in particular are one of the primary audiences of this video. Also, in advance of the Destiny 2 PC release, I feel it is valuable to discuss the following points, since aiming, track speed, and in some ways certain movement patterns are far easier and quicker on PC. To start with, let's talk about weapons in the Crucible. There is some pretty decisive data offered up by Bungie themselves regarding PvP, listing the Mida MultiTool as the absolute % item being used right now. Something like 90% of teams in trials during the first weekend had a player using this particular exotic, and 30 or so percent of the players in general are wielding one in regular Crucible matches. There are a few reasons for this. 1, it is very easy to obtain. 2, it has great damage as well as range, and 3, it augments movement speed. Now, movement speed has huge air quotes around it because Bungie has a really hard time communicating with their info bytes what is actually happening in their game's calculations. But regardless, it is the premier PvP gun in use at this time. The obvious first point I should make is that with a weapon like this consuming the Destiny 2 meta, an easy tip is to use it yourself, and that is totally fine if you choose to do so. However, I have received a lot of feedback and seen a lot of social media chatter about players being discontent with the atmosphere of everyone focus firing with Mida MultiTools and are looking for alternative ways to play. The answer to this question, in my eyes, has many parts, but I will try to break it down as best as I can. For those specifically attempting to move away from scout rifles, I highly recommend auto rifles in PvP, specifically Scathelock, which has great RPM, decent damage, a fantastic magazine size, and handles itself very well due to its stability and accuracy perks. I also recommend Uriel's Gift, which is possibly my favorite Crucible weapon altogether and has slightly reduced RPM and lower magazine size, but much higher impact and solid stability as well as accuracy. A third auto rifle I would stand behind, since the game's RNG can be pretty unforgiving and I don't want a video guide that people watch and then think to themselves, great, a recommended rifle or two that I have never seen or gotten, would be Martyr's Make. It has great RPM, on par with Scathelock, good magazine size, and its perks, accurized rounds, and high impact reserves give it long range and hard hitting shots, especially at the end of the magazine. This gives it some serious punch in a lot of circumstances against enemies using specifically the Mida MultiTool. Aside from auto rifles, there are a lot of potential picks in other categories. I won't really weigh in on them in this particular video, but there are some really good sidearms and SMGs for close range encounters that have tight recoil patterns and spreads, so make sure to do your own testing in the Crucible. I do recommend auto rifles though, and I feel that they're the most competitive after the Mida MultiTool in particular, and that a lot of other gun types fall short in a lot of ways. So again, focusing on auto rifles. Now that we've gone over some alternative weapons, let's talk about main stat allocation within PvP. This is where my last video regarding main stat usefulness fell very short, as I was tackling the testing with PvE only in mind. I tested sprint speed on mobility at different values, damage with fluctuating resilience, and recovery on self-inflicted grenade damage, and my findings were basically this. Resilience and mobility are garbage in PvE. However, the value of resilience and mobility in PvP is far different. Right here you can see the difference between 2 mobility and 9 mobility while strafing back and forth. The thing to know about mobility is that it only affects jump height, air control, and walking speed. Strafing is a function of walking back and forth side to side, so popping in and out of cover rapidly to take shots and then hide again is boosted by the mobility stat. Mobility has zero effect on sprinting, and overall should be pretty much ignored in PvE, but in PvP, without paying attention to mobility, it may be difficult to strafe away to safety behind a wall and avoid damage. For this reason, I recommend at least 4 mobility in the Crucible. It's not necessary, but it helps. Next we have resilience. Same as mobility, resilience has little to no value in PvE, But in PvP, where many Guardians have predictable damage output numbers, and damage can legitimately be measured instead of the nebulous amounts associated with PvE, it has some value at a specific threshold. All credit for this chart goes to the username Draples on the subreddit. I did not make this chart myself, and I will skip the specific math, but the end result is that the marginal increases from resilience when compared directly to the Mida MultiTool start to matter. After the 4 resilience threshold, a Guardian has enough health to just barely survive 3 headshots and 1 body shot from a quote-unquote high-impact scout rifle, which is exactly what the Mida MultiTool is. Essentially, the small increase in Guardian health at 4 resilience means Mida users will likely drop you slower, and in circumstances of stacked multi-tools, which is very, very common, you can potentially survive an additional shot in the barrage altogether. These facts, combined with the value of recovery, which has a very tangible impact on your shield regen start time and speed with every number point increase, means there is some optimal main stat number combinations in the Crucible to make your life easier. I recommend the 4-4-7 combination, but for those who prioritize movement over recovery, a 6-4-6 combination is also very good. These changes aren't huge, but entering the Crucible with, let's say, 1 mobility, 1 resilience, and 9 recovery, though I would honestly suggest that for PvE wholeheartedly, would result in a Guardian taking a long time to strafe back to cover, all the while getting hit by multi-tools, which they are weak to. With a 4-4-7 spread, they can tank a bit more, get back into cover easier, and it is a notable improvement. With the launch of the PC version coming in fast and the mouse and keyboard efficiency being what it is, these tips will likely be tenfold more valuable once the game finally does launch for PC players, provided the multi-tool has not been changed by then. It might be, it might not, but even if it has, high-impact scout rifles still exist, and this will still be an effective spread of stats to use, not only against them, but against pretty much every other weapon type in the game. Last up is basic Crucible tactics. If you are an experienced Destiny player with thousands of hours of PvP under your belt, this section in particular really isn't going to help you. But if you are new to the Destiny universe, which many Guardians are, it may be of some use. Firstly, all modes are now 4v4. Destiny 2 has sacrificed diversity and customization greatly in favor of PvP balancing, and making all matches 4v4, regardless of map or playlist, is just another indicator that they are, in my opinion, pushing towards an esports scene. In a match, I recommend sticking with another player and roaming in pairs of 2 if you are able to find a friend or have a clan, etc, etc, etc. However, even matchmaking by yourself, you can just pick an ally and stick close to them to achieve pretty much the same result. While a lot of people find the need to play fast-paced in PvP, especially those coming through just for their engram rewards, it is much more valuable to sit a bit back. Nothing major, but if you have the patience and don't feel the need to be first onto the breach, you can usually have a much better experience staying alive and focusing down targets and getting wins. Utilize your radar and flank enemies whenever possible. The maps in Destiny 2 are very, very open, and rarely will there be an area with less than 2 entrances that are easily accessible. So getting the drop on enemies mid-firefight by running 15 feet out and around a corner will usually get you on the board. Also, make sure to use the right grenade for your playstyle. I always opt for something with a residual area of effect and then drop it as a denial tool. Throwing the ability preemptively at a spot where the enemy team may be able to exit or flank you can trap them in a smaller area or force them out of cover, which gives your squad a tactical advantage. Lastly, take a look at your subclass. A lot of Guardians may just queue into Crucible with whatever they have on for PvE without a second thought, but some subclasses are definitively better in PvP than others. I recommend using something with an extended duration that allows for multiple throws, shots, or procs. I used the Warlock Void Super one time and fired it right into a friendly Titan shield. Needless to say, I felt really stupid. It did nothing. My super was wasted. But with Dawnblade, for instance, I could have adjusted and then thrown another projectile. There are honestly a wealth of other tips when it comes to Destiny Crucible PvP, and some players are far more experienced than I am. But using these tips, I am able to hold my own, perform well enough not to drag down my team, and have a pretty solid experience whenever I choose to enter the competitive playlist. I am by no means a professional Destiny 2 PvP player, but hopefully this information was of use. If you want to support the channel, check out the numerous links down below. We have new clans forming, which are open to the public. We are putting together raid schedules over time, and the upper echelon forums are available for discussion. I also stream live on Twitch, though it's been a bit spotty recently as I get back into the swing of the YouTube game. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and have a nice night.